What up, y'all? Welcome back to Sexton Accountability. Today, I'm going to share my experience with methadone, okay? The methadone clinic. All right, so let's get right into it. So I started taking methadone after I tried it, all right? Basically, a dealer that I was going to frequently didn't have any of the opiates I was looking for at one point and said, hey, dude, I have methadone. Now, he had methadone pills. There were these little white pills that had an M on them. And I always just associated methadone with being sketchy, okay? My grandfather, who was a heroin addict, he was on methadone for an extended period of time. I think he went back and forth. And really just, it was something that was so stigmatized and just viewed as so dirty that I was like, I don't know. I was hesitant to even take it, which is pretty funny because it's like, I was doing like oxy and pharmaceutical fentanyl and like all this shit. But somehow when I heard about methadone, I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. So when I took it, it surprised me. It was a lot stronger than I thought it would be. And I was like, okay, holy shit. Like, let me look into this. So I go online and there's a methadone clinic that's like 2 blocks away from where I lived. And so I'm like, damn, like maybe I can convince my mom to be down with this. I was living with my mom at the time, all right? And I was 20 years old. And I just thought to myself, okay, well, it's obvious my family doesn't want me abusing pills. Like I would go and get scripts periodically and then of course just buy whatever I could. And so I was like, you know what? What if I had a reliable source? Okay. And then I looked into the website for the methadone clinic. And to be completely honest, there was a lot of misinformation. It was like saying that it healed your bones and shit and like all this stuff. Come to find out, it actually wasn't helpful for your bone health. And so it was like very conflicting, but the website just lacked in integrity, if I'm being completely honest. It was slightly predatory. And so in looking into that, I discovered, okay, like this is like accepted. And so I was like, damn, I'm definitely going to get on methadone. You know what I mean? And then for me, it wasn't like an honest, authentic thing to be like, I'm going to get into recovery. It was more so like, I'm going to have a reliable source, basically, because it was just annoying to constantly be searching. And like I said, I would always go and try to get scripts. So I was constantly going to the emergency room, going in there, and just trying to get opiates. I would go to pain clinics. And most of them all of them actually turned me away because I just was really obviously med seeking. I did something called doctor shopping. If you're unfamiliar, basically I just would go look for different doctors and go in with the intention of getting a specific medication. All right. So for me, I was like, damn, this could take away a lot of that. So I went, there was an orientation and, my mom came with me and we went to the clinic. And to be completely honest, I was wasn't really thinking that critically. And I was like, you know what, this will be a reliable source. Now, look, I just want to say, I'm sharing all this stuff. The intention behind this video is not to hate on methadone. This is just my experience with it. Okay. And I fully support MAT, medication assisted treatment. All right. But let's keep it moving. So basically, during this time, I was prescribed Klonopin. All right. If you're unfamiliar, Klonopin is a benzodiazepine, an anti-anxiety medication like Xanax, Ativan, Valium. All right. And so I was on a pretty hefty dose of Klonopin and I hid that. So I didn't say anything about that. And, basically they didn't test me until I already got on to the methadone. So I was already on it. And then they tested me and saw, oh, you're on Klonopin. This is an issue. But they said, as long as we can communicate with your prescribing doctor, then that's okay. So basically, I got the green light. It was like, you know what, you can actually take this. And if you're, unfamiliar, taking opiates and benzos together is a no-go. It causes respiratory depression, which can lead to respiratory failure. It's extremely dangerous. All right. So right out the gate, that was just sketchy. I constantly would piss dirty for stuff, and they wouldn't do anything about it. And this isn't to say like, oh, that was all their fault and they weren't. I'm just saying like they were lacking in integrity, and they were not upholding a certain standard. Now you could say, and I would agree with this, that you shouldn't turn people away that are seeking out methadone for, reasons to reduce harm in their life. Okay. But for me, I just wanted something reliable. I could not manage any medications on my own. And quite frankly, the fact that they were giving it to me and that I only had a specific amount, I only took what I was prescribed. They set it up like that. So that part was actually legit. But the thing is that they let me go up in milligrams very consistently. They let me up my dose basically. And so within a year, I was at 160 milligrams of methadone, which is a lot. All right. Now, there's a couple things I want to touch on. First of all, I started off on the liquid. It was disgusting. It was like a cherry flavor. I hate cherry flavored anything. So this was just really gross. And what you do is just so you know what it's like, you go into the clinic, all right? There's a line usually. And basically, later on, they implemented like this machine that you would put your cash into and like have like a little number to like sign in. And so it was basically like, that's where you made payment. And so it was $60 a day, $60. And I was like, you know what, dude, $60 to just be completely like leveled out as far as opiates. I'm with that. So just the actual, like the vibe there was really weird. Like you see a lot of people that are just like getting it to like try to hustle it or like, just like, I don't know. It was just sketchy. I'm not going to lie. Like the vibe was sketchy. I'm not saying this to hate or stigmatize it. It just was sketchy, Like methadone clinics are always associated with being sketchy, and there's a lot of stigma around it, but I'm sorry, it was straight up sketchy. And so what ended up happening is it was like the perfect place for me to meet people who had Xans or who had whatever else. And so it was like, all I got to do is go to the clinic, wait in line, I'll end up talking to people, end up finding a whole bunch of shit. So like I said, none of this is meant to invalidate it. I'm just saying this was my experience, okay? So I was someone who is a pharmaceutical pill user. I was not a heroin addict or anything, even though that's pretty much the exact same thing. One of them is a little bit more dangerous when you're using needles, but this isn't about me comparing myself or minimizing my substance use, okay? I'm just saying, I was someone who was diagnosed with chronic pain, who began abusing opiates. And so this was just a very reliable source for me. And so basically what ended up happening is when the higher I went up as far as my dose, the more symptoms I was having that were, in my mind, positive, but in everyone else's that was around me and witnessing it, they were just inherently negative. So I was nodding out. And if you're unfamiliar, nodding out is like, going like that or with your head down, and you're basically passing out. And so the opiates and the benzos combined, they were making me pass out. And I was so lit up, like, because I was going at 5 a.m. in the morning. I was going. And to get back to the structure, because I'm all over the place. So you wait in line, I would pay the money, and then you go up to a window, and it's glass. All right. So there's a nurse that's like behind glass, and there's just a little area for them to put the medication through a little slot, basically. And they would give me the medication. And then the longer you stay, then you get take homes. So they'll give you some for the weekends and stuff. And depending on the clinic, some of them will give you a bunch of take homes, so you don't have to go in that often. But it's about a trust. It's like a trust system. So they have to like see you coming consistently and like, doing well or whatever, and then they'll give you more basically. So I worked up to having a lot of take homes. I didn't abuse them. But quite frankly, the only reason I didn't abuse them is because I was so lit off 160 milligrams with the Klonopin. And I also would take other benzos because I would just piss dirty for benzos, and I could just take a whole bunch of like different benzos. I did everything during this time. I did coke. During this time I didn't do meth, but I did in the past. Plenty of Molly, plenty of bath salts or methadone, psychedelics, like literally everything. But just to kind of keep it really concise and clear, because I'm definitely all over the place tonight. What ended up happening is I started to have symptoms of respiratory failure. I started nodding out all day long. So I went in at 5 a.m. and I would be so gone by like 7. And you know what I mean? So it was like my day was just non-existent. And ultimately that was one of my goals in substance use, was to not feel anything and to avoid reality. Okay. Unfortunately, you can only avoid reality for so long before it all comes crashing down. So because it was so scary, and because I was having the symptoms of respiratory failure at night, I would wake up gasping for air. My mom looked into an addictionologist. So that's a doctor who practices addiction medicine. Okay. And he immediately was like, you need to send him to treatment. Like straight up, you need to send him to treatment. And, you know, my mom was dating someone at the time that was able to supply the funds, and I went to treatment. I had an intervention. I woke up at 5 a.m. to someone knocking at my bedroom door. And this person was like, hey, you want to come talk? And I was like, fuck you. Like, I immediately didn't like this person. I was like, because I could sense accountability or honesty. And it was like, I stayed away from anyone like that. So yeah, that was my experience with methadone. In a year, it brought me to the lowest point I'd ever been in my substance use. And it was reliable. I could get it consistently. And for me, that wasn't good. That's just me, okay? So I'm all for, like, you know, regulating substances and making them more accessible in certain situations. But for me, it wasn't about accessibility. Like, accessibility didn't, like, decrease like how bad it was. You know what I'm saying? But I can understand that with certain lifestyles, like having access will reduce crime. It would reduce people like committing multiple felonies every single day to get what they need. You know what I mean? So like, I get it. I just can tell you, my experience was that the reliability was not good for me, and it brought me down really low. So what I would say is that if you're going to go to a methadone clinic, go into it with a lot of oversight and make sure that you have like a treatment plan, and make sure that you're actively working in your recovery. That's just my opinion, okay? I think that there's plenty of people that are on MAT and they're actually working on themselves, and that's why it's effective. For me, I was just using it as a place to go get this substance. And, you know, even as someone who was like really into Oxy and like Dilaudid and stuff like that, methadone got me pretty messed up, dude. I'm just, okay, it was because of the high dose. All right. So yeah, that was my experience with methadone. I'll end with this and say, I took Suboxone for about 2.5 weeks in rehab. They used that to get me off the methadone, and I was in rehab for 4 months. So I was only on the Suboxone for a small amount of time. I did not take it long term, and that was just my experience. But I did take a lot of medications like Seroquel, gabapentin, Depakote, Wellbutrin, and I'm mixing up the name right now, but it's a blood pressure medication. Clonidine. All right, so I was taking all those medications for about three and a half years in my early recovery. Okay, so medications were a huge part of my recovery, and they were a huge part of my substance use disorder. But at this point, I'm completely unmedicated, and I do abstinence-based recovery. But my way is not the only way, and you know, it took a lot of medication to get to the place that I'm at now. So that's it. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. Also, check out my website, sextonaccountability.com, for my accountability coaching or consulting. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.